Stand up.
Issues out of black and white. Let's concentrate on right and wrong.
And now, our voices today.
Why are we led by our pride? We shouldn't let them block the path to our hearts and minds. We must first be informed of what's going on. It's time to make the short story longer.
Welcome to Our Voices today, right here on WOVU 95.9 FM. This is your beloved unicorn of the land, DJ Black Unicorn, aka Uni, live in the studio with you. Hello. I hope everyone has been having an amazing, tranquil morning. Quite opposite of myself, but I made it by the grace of God. We are here and we are live. It is Friday Junior. It is Thursday, January 18th, and it's still frosty, but it's a little better. It's 25 degrees outside, and hopefully we don't see any more snow. But this is Cleveland. Who knows? We shall see. I have a very special guest in the building with me. They have been here many times before, but I'm not quite sure if this particular gentleman has visited WOVU, but we will find out shortly. I have Mr. Mike Russell live in the studio with me. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me. How are
Thank you for coming. Please. I will go ahead and do a little bio intro for you, but I'm sure you can properly introduce yourself a little bit better than I can this morning. Mr. Russell has been with Legal Aid since 2017 and is a senior attorney in the Legal Aid's Community Engagement Practice Group. His work is centered on representing cooperatives, nonprofits, and community groups such as residents of the Euclid Beach mobile home community in Collinwood neighborhood, which, by the way, I didn't even realize was there until I went to the beach one morning. I was like, there's a mobile home community right here? Interesting. Anyway, he strives to use community lawyering principles to support low-income people, organizing to build collective power, wealth, and community in the solidarity economy. Mike has worked with legal aid organizations most of his career. He started at Alaska Legal Services, and before joining Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid in El Paso, Texas, where he worked for 6 years, he moved to Northeast Ohio with his partner and their two lovely children in 2015. Hello this morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
It's so great to have you here. I know I gave your background and everything. I'm sure you could do yourself again a little bit more justice, though.
Sure. Well, let me say it's an honor and a privilege to be on WOVU and Our Voices today. I'm a big fan of terrestrial radio, so it's always a thrill when I get to go on a radio station. As you said, I'm a lawyer for the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland. I've been with Legal Aid since 2017. And today I'm here to talk about a type of driver's license suspension that affects millions of Ohioans over the years. Mm-hmm. The suspension is not related to dangerous driving. It's related to debts that people have. So they owe money or they fail to show in court and they're assessed a fine and they lose their driver's license as a result.
Which I myself have some complications in the license department.
You're not alone.
So what should people in Cleveland know about debt-related driver's license suspensions?
Sure. Well, they should know that they're prevalent. Mm-hmm. So in the state of Ohio, 1 million people have their driver's license suspended. Ooh. And if we think about the number of suspensions, so not just people suspended, but the number of suspensions, there's about 3 million active suspensions in any given year. Because a lot of people have more than one driver's license suspensions. Yes. The majority of these suspensions are not for dangerous driving. They're for things like not showing up to court or failing to pay a court fine or fee, or failing to pay, even third-party private debt collectors on a judgment that they're assessed that may or may not be related to their driving at all. Mm-hmm. And we call this sort of loose bundle of suspensions debt-related suspensions because they're more related to debt than they are to dangerous driving.
Yes. Can you give some examples of how these suspensions cause hardship for those affected?
Sure. So for a lot of folks, a debt-related suspension is the beginning of sort of a downward spiral of debt. The conundrum here, the catch-22, is you're taking away a person's driver's license because they owe a debt. But when you take away their ability to drive, their transportation, you also take away their ability to earn money to pay off the debt in many circumstances. So there's a serious contradiction here. Mm-hmm. So let's say someone is driving, let's say they recently lost their job, they can't afford insurance, they get a ticket for driving without insurance, right? Mm-hmm. They're assessed a fine, they go to court, they may pay that fine. Mm-hmm. But in a parallel process, the court's going to report to the Ohio BMV that they received a ticket for driving without insurance. Mm-hmm. That's going to result in a suspension. Now, the person should be notified of that suspension, but let's say they don't get the notice because recently their address has changed, or let's say they get a notice, but it's difficult to understand. They're not sure what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that results in a suspension. Their driver's license is taken away. They may or may not know about it. They need to pay more money to get their driver's license back. That's on top of getting insurance. And there are all sorts of other consequences to the suspension as well. Mm. Now, if you're caught again without insurance, let's say you didn't know about it in the first time, those fees go up, and the length of the suspension gets longer, and sort of the debt grows. Mm-hmm. Now, the debt is growing, but you don't have an ability to drive legally, which impacts your ability to work. Let's say your job is dependent on driving. Well, you're going to lose that job. You're not going to be able to pay your debt. So right. you go down the spiral. And that's just one example. That's driving without insurance is called a non-compliance suspension. But there are things like security suspensions or judgment suspensions. There's warrant blocks. There's registration blocks. There's suspensions for not paying child support. There's all sorts of debt-related suspensions.
Mm. Wow. So, to my understanding, there are some cases where a judge will allow driving privileges. How can people obtain those if they're stuck in these type of situations, but they still need to get to work, they still need to get to their kids' school, so on and so forth? That's
a really good question. So some of these suspensions do allow for limited driving privileges, but the person has to know about that right, and they have to file a motion with the court to request it. And if they're successful, that will result in an order that will allow them to drive in a limited way, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say they're allowed to drive to and from work, they're allowed to drive to and from childcare or from schools to pick up their children, but they're not allowed to drive in other circumstances. But that's only available in some of these suspensions. Mm-hmm. For instance, a security suspension, which is when you're driving without insurance, you get into an accident, and that accident causes damage or cost to the driver that's in the accident. Mm-hmm. Or let's say a judgment suspension. You may owe a civil judgment to a private third party, let's say just a person that is totally unrelated to driving. All they have to do is file a form with the BMV if that judgment isn't paid, and the BMV will suspend your license.
Wow.
In those circumstances, you can't apply for limited driving privileges. Mm-hmm. So you're stuck in a judgment suspension case without a driver's license until you either pay off that judgment or the judgment becomes inactive. Mm. And in security suspension cases, if you can't pay the security deposit that's required after the suspension starts, mm-hmm.
You're
stuck with the suspension for 2 years, and you can't apply for limited driving privileges during that time.
That's so tragic. Oh, my gosh. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss more about these debt-related driver license suspensions. Larry, I appreciate that info. Don't go anywhere. WOVU 95.9 FM. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life. Stand up, my people. Yeah. Throw me the ball and watch what I do with it.
Hey y'all out there, I am Donnie Ali Brooks, Coach Brooks. I am presenting the Akron Baseball Project Incorporated Winter Clinic on February 24th, 2024 from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. right at the AB Academy. Address is 2420 Wedgewood Drive, Akron, Ohio. I am a former D1 college baseball player. I'm going to be coaching these kids. They'll be on the field in no time. I also have Marlon Somerville, former D1 baseball player as well, pitcher. He will be attending as well, coaching the youth from ages 5 to 15 years old. We'll be also providing food. The food will be pizza, water, and Gatorade, and a whole lot of awesome vibes with music. You don't want to miss out. It's going to be boys and girls. Ages 5 to 15 are all welcome. Parents can sit in, watch their kids, of course, see them improve and get better and great. Hurry now. It's 50 slots total, 34 left, so don't miss out. It's your chance to be a part of something great for the Akron Baseball Project Winter Clinic. You can contact me at 234-417-1239. Also by email, Donnie, D-O-N-N-Y, Brooks, B-R-O-O-K-S, 110@gmail.com. Thanks again.
This message was brought to you by the Akron Baseball Project and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burtonville Card Community Radio.
Play ball! It's time to make the short story longer. Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life. Stand up, my people.
Welcome back to WOVU 95.9 FM. You are tuned in to Our Voices Today right here on Burton Bell Car Community Radio. If you are just tuning in, I have Mr. Mike Russell of the Legal Aid Society here in Cleveland. We've been discussing all about debt-related driver license suspensions. So we're going to hop right back into it, Mr. Russell. When it comes to the demographics of who is affected by all of these date-related suspensions, I mean, I could probably guess who's the most afflicted in this, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think your guesses are probably going to be right. But the good news is, if you can call it good news, is now those guesses are confirmed by numbers. Mm-hmm. So in 2022, Legal Aid published a study. I was a co-author on it, where we looked at 4 years of BMV data, all about debt-related suspensions. And we wanted to know in what zip codes did these suspensions happen, at what rate, what were the numbers, how much did people pay on these suspensions, what debt was left outstanding, what was satisfied. And we crunched all these numbers, and the results were pretty staggering, but again, not surprising. Mm-hmm. Debt-related driver's license suspensions disproportionately affect people who live in zip codes with high poverty. Mm-hmm. If you create a graph, let's say, and you have you break up all the zip codes in Ohio into 10 categories, and on the left side you have the zip codes with the most money, and on the right side you have the zip codes with the least amount of money, the highest rates of poverty. Mm-hmm. You're going to get a graph that looks like a diagonal line when you look at the number of debt-related suspensions in those zip codes. Mm-hmm. It's really staggering. We're talking about multiple times. And that trend also applies to the greater Cleveland area. We also looked at Legal Aid's service area, which is the 5 counties, Cuyahoga, Geauga, Lake Lorraine, and Ashtabula, mm-hmm. and it looked virtually the same. So we wanted to see if there was a connection between debt-related suspensions and poverty, and it looks like that connection is pretty strong. Mm. We also looked at zip codes with high percentages of residents of color, right? Because we wanted to see if there was a race connection here. Mm-hmm. And the graph looks virtually identical. The zip codes in the state, but also in the greater Cleveland area, with the highest percentage of residents who are people of color, receive many, we're talking 100 times more debt-related suspensions than zip codes with the least amount of people of color in the state and also in the greater Cleveland area. So there is a disproportionate effect on people of color and people of low incomes when it comes to debt-related driver's license suspensions.
Wow. Again, not surprising. So what can someone do if their driver license is suspended? What would be their first steps to take?
Well, a few things. First, you want to know what kind of suspension you have. And the BMV, the Ohio BMV, has a pretty good website where you can access your driving record online. It's going to tell you whether your license is active or suspended. It's going to tell you what kind of suspensions you have on your record if it is suspended. And it'll also tell you what you need to do to resolve those suspensions. So the first thing to do would be to look up your driving record to see what is on your record and how to get out of it. Then the next thing to do is try to follow those instructions. If you have money to pay, you pay. If you don't, you can request a payment plan from the BMV depending on the type of suspension you have. There's also sort of a permanent amnesty program that the BMV has that reduces a lot of compliance fees that they charge to make it a little bit more affordable. If you have a suspension, like a non-compliant suspension for driving without insurance, for example, where you can request driving privileges, you should do that in the court that issued the ticket that you received. File a motion requesting limited driving privileges. The court probably has a form motion that you can use to file, and courts are pretty good about granting those when they're warranted. You also need insurance. If you're going to resolve any types of suspension, you're going to have to show proof of insurance.
Yes. When it comes to insurance, because let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of times people feel like they're just putting money down the drain when they're paying insurance. Some people just refuse to get insurance.
Right.
Let's talk about the importance of that to avoid these debt-related incidents from happening in the first place. How can people change their mindset about insurance?
Well, I think if talking about a type of suspension called a security suspension, that might drive the message home. So let's say you're driving without insurance and you get into a fender bender with another car. That driver claims that it cost them, let's say, $2,000 worth of damages on their vehicle. They're going to file a form with the BMV that says, hey, we got into an accident with this person. This person didn't show proof of insurance. We want their driver's license suspended until they pay us the $2,000 they owe us. Now, they don't need a judgment for that. They don't need any proof other than a statement from a body shop that shows an estimate of $2,000. And the BMV will send a notice to the uninsured driver saying that they'll suspend their license in 30 days unless they pay the security deposit that's required. And that's going to be the amount of damages that the other driver claims the driver without insurance owes. So you have you're let's say, and you can even get a ticket, right? So you can get a ticket for driving without insurance. You have this suspension for driving without insurance, and that suspension is going to stay in your record for 2 years unless you pay that person the $2,000 in full. Now, let's say you don't pay that money, but that person ends up taking you to court. They sue you for those $2,000 plus maybe attorney's fees, so it's going to go up, and they get a judgment against you. Now they have a judgment suspension. They show that to the BMV. The BMV is going to convert the security suspension to a judgment suspension, and that will stay on your record for years. I think forgive me, but it's between 7 and 10 years before a judgment goes inactive. It's going to stay on that record for that long unless you pay that judgment amount. So driving, if you had insurance, if the driver had insurance, the insurance would pay the $2,000 that cost the other driver in the accident, and none of this would happen.
Right.
It is an expense.
Right.
And it's a hard expense for a lot of people.
Yes, it is a hard expense. I understand it. A lot of times, especially, if you've had suspensions before,
right,
incidents before, speeding tickets, any type of car-related incidents, your insurance automatically goes up every time.
Right.
So I understand there is a level of, I would say, I don't want to do this because I may not be able to afford it.
Right.
Or I simply just don't have it. Or maybe I do have it, but I'm not paying somebody $300 a month for something that may or may not happen.
Right.
But it's very important to do so, because at the end of the day, if you do not have insurance is going to come back to you in some way, shape, or form at some point.
Right. It's required by law.
Yes, required by law. So please, people, just go ahead and do the right thing for yourself. Save yourself some hassle and get some insurance, because you can avoid a lot of problems and a lot of issues simply just having insurance and avoiding a lot of these debt-related driver license suspensions. But why are the current laws surrounding debt-related driver license suspensions so hard for people to navigate and understand?
Well, there are so many, right? I just named a few types of suspensions. There's also a type of suspension called a forfeiture suspension, which is essentially if you violate a few dozen misdemeanor laws in the state of Ohio, they could be related to driving or they could be unrelated to driving. That could result in a driver's license suspension. Let's say that you have courts in multiple jurisdictions, right? In Ohio, we have a court system where we have, tons of jurisdictions in each county. Let's say you have a ticket in 3 of them. That's 3 different courts where you need to navigate their system in order to pay whatever fees you may owe in order to get rid of, let's say it's a warrant block, because you failed to show up. You got a traffic ticket, you failed to show up in court. The court issues a warrant block, which means that you won't be able to renew your license or your registration going forward. To resolve that issue, you could have to go to multiple courts in different counties until you're totally free of this burden. There's also the issue of communication, right? Communication from the BMV is often difficult to understand. There's been some recent improvements in that area that we're proud of, because we had a role in redrafting a lot of these notices to make them understandable by people. But a lot of the notices you get in the mail, you may not understand what it means. You may not even know it's a suspension, let alone know how to prevent it or how to fight it or how to resolve it. Something that people should know is in some of these suspensions, if you get a notice from the BMV, you actually have an opportunity to challenge it. You have an opportunity to request a hearing, but you have to affirmatively take advantage of that opportunity by meeting the deadline in the notice and sending in the request. In the case of security suspensions, it's going to be a 30-day deadline. In the case of noncompliance suspensions, it's actually a 10-day deadline, so it's really short.
Whew. So to be clear, as soon as they get the notice, they have 30 days to pretty much put in a request for a hearing to challenge the debt-related suspension, correct?
It depends on what kind of suspension it is.
Okay.
If it's a security suspension, it'll be 30 days. If it's a non-compliance suspension, it'll be 10 days.
Okay. And just for clarification, can you tell the difference of the two again?
Non-compliance suspension is driving without insurance. A security suspension is driving without insurance and getting into an accident that caused another person damages.
Yikes. Don't go anywhere. We're nowhere near done talking, because when we get back from this wonderful break we're about to have, we're going to talk a little bit more about Legal Aid Society in itself and these great clinics that will be coming up where you yourself, if you're having any legal troubles, not just debt-related, but focused on debt-related, but again, if you have any type of legal troubles, we'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that right after this break and those clinics coming up. Don't go anywhere. Our voices today, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life. Stand up, my people.
There's no one like Mama, so celebrate her the right way. It's a Mother's Day celebration. Cleveland, it's Yolanda Adams. Sing Sean P. Keith. Praise with Jacqueline Carr. And Charles Jenkins. A Mother's Day celebration hosted by comedian Jay Lamont. Saturday, May 11th at Playhouse Square.
2024 Mother's Day is going to be amazing. Make sure you are there to receive your special welcome from Jay the Gospel Kid Williams as well. Visit PlayhouseSquare.com for more information. This message is brought to you by Playhouse Square and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
It's time to make the short story longer, yeah.
Welcome back to Our Voices Today, right here on Burton Belcar Community Radio with your beloved unicorn of the land, Uni. And yes, I'm still singing. I'm never going to stop, but that's why I DJ. You know, I have to express myself in other ways. But singing isn't it? And it's, I can accept that. That's okay. My daughter told me I can't sing in the house yesterday, Mr. Russell. It was so sad. I was like, Dad, you killing my joy. Like you. I think I can hold a tune a little bit.
I'm sure you can better than me.
Do you karaoke?
When I was a young man, I was known to karaoke a little bit. I have not done so in many years.
If you're just tuning in, I have Mr. Mike Russell of the Legal Aid Society here live in the studio with me. We've been discussing all things debt-related driver's license suspensions. Oh, gosh. I sigh so heavy because I myself has been afflicted by the suspensions of the debt-related and it sucks. It sucks. And it took a lot of effort and money to get my license situated. But if you are in that situation currently, or you think you just might be, make sure you visit. First step would be visiting, just making sure your status. Go to bmv.ohio.gov. /driver license to check out the status of your license, and if it is indeed debt related suspended, you yourself can visit one of these upcoming Legal Aid Society clinics happening this Saturday actually from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. right inside the Cleveland Public Library Carnegie West branch, and then again happening Saturday February 3rd, same time, 10 to 11 at the Warrensville Heights branch. And then that third one will be February 10th, happening 10 to 11 at the Union branch. Mr. Russell, are you going to be here at these clinics?
I may not be at these clinics, but a lot of really dedicated legal aid advocates will be.
Yes.
And it's a great chance, even, if you have questions about a debt-related suspension, you can go to these clinics and ask them. But if you have questions about any legal issue, you can go to these clinics and sit down with a lawyer and have a conversation for about 20 minutes and get some brief advice about what to do. It could be a referral. It could be a certain number of steps to take to resolve the issue. Mm-hmm. It's not going to result in extended representation where this lawyer is going to represent you in a court case. Mm-hmm. But it's a great chance to talk to a lawyer to at least figure out, okay, what are my next steps to resolve this problem?
Yes. And just for the people in the back that may not be too familiar with Legal Aid Society in itself and what they do, their mission is to secure justice, equity, and access to opportunity for and with people who have low incomes through passionate legal representation and advocacy for systematic change. We, I guess I could say we since you're live in the studio with me today. But Legal Aid Society provides legal services at no cost. So though, as Mr. Russell just mentioned, they may not, see it all the way with you right in court, they will help you get the services started so you can know where to go, how to go about getting this issue that you have resolved. And they make sure they help ensure the fairness for all in the justice system, regardless of how much money a person may or may not have.
That's right. That's right. That's the goal. So yes. We're essentially a nonprofit law firm, right? Mm-hmm. We're like any law firm that you may have heard of, but we don't charge our clients money. Mm-hmm. But we provide a wide variety of legal services for folks. Everything from legal issues related to debt or money or employment or housing. We do a lot of eviction work, mm-hmm. Family issues, a lot of domestic violence work, securing protective orders, family law, health, benefits-related law. Mm-hmm. It really runs the gamut. Yes. And we don't charge our clients a dime for the work that we do. But clients have to apply for our services. Mm. So if you have a legal issue and you're seeking some legal representation and you want to apply to Legal Aid for help, the best way would be to go to our website if you have access to the internet and click on that how to apply. It's a apply for help tab on the upper right hand corner of the first page. And it's going to ask you some basic information. That information is going to go to our incredibly hardworking and dedicated intake staff, and they're going to give you a call in a few days to complete the application.
Yes, and that website is lasclev.org. lasclev.org. So again, guys, anything law that you may need some help with, from the Rudy to the Tootie. When we're talking health, we're talking shelter and safety, we're talking economics and education. These attorneys practice in the areas of consumer rights, domestic violence, as Mr. Russell mentioned, with along a few others, education, employment, family law, health, housing, foreclosure, immigration, public benefits, utilities, and taxes. Because, guys, we all know what time of year it is. It is tax season.
Is it already?
Okay. I'm sure a lot of people, may be out there with some tax issues. The Legal Aid Society can help you resolve any tax issues you may have. But again, they can help you resolve any law issues in general. No matter what it is, they can help you figure out how to resolve your law issue. And they are also the 5th oldest legal aid organization in the U.S., servicing residents in Ashtabula, Cuyahoga, Geauga, Lake, and Lorain counties. And in addition to direct representation in civil legal cases, Legal Aid also provides an abundance of other services, including brief legal advice, information, referrals, and resources, which you can again receive at any of these upcoming 3 brief advice clinics happening this Saturday, again at Carnegie West Branch, February 3rd at the Warrensville Branch, and last but definitely won't be the last of the year, it will be February 10th at the Union Branch. And Mr. Russell, I know you said you won't be there, but there will be a lot of other lawyers and people that will be able to help whatever your law issue is. And again, I know it's tax season. If you might have been like me about 3 years ago, independent contractor, didn't know what to do.
It's tough.
I wish I knew about Legal Aid Society back then. It got resolved though. But
can I give a couple of clarifications?
Yes, please.
In addition, if you want to apply for services, you can go to our website. That's probably the fastest way. But you can also call. We have a number to call just by phone. It's 888-817-3777. And you can talk to our intake staff. I encourage you to make, you might have to make more than one phone call. We have a limited number of lines. We get a lot of calls every day.
Yes.
And also part of the intake process is to make sure you qualify for services. We don't serve everyone. We serve people who make under a certain amount of gross annual income. Generally, it's about 200% of the federal poverty guidelines by household size. So the intake, the application process is making sure you qualify for services, that you're eligible for our services, and also that your problem is an area that we work in. One other important clarification, we don't do criminal work. We don't represent clients in criminal cases. All of the work that we do is civil. So it's legal issues about money, things that don't result in jail time, but rather are disputes between people or institutions.
Right. Okay. Understood. So clarification, one more time, disclaimer, no criminal cases. Everything civil. Right. Everything civil. Thank you so much, Mr.
Brothers and sisters at
Russell.
the public defender do the criminal work.
Yes. So why are the current laws surrounding debt-related driver license suspension so hard for people to navigate? But I understand that is also changing. Because before the break, we went over why it's so hard and how you guys have helped to navigate those things.
Right.
But as you mentioned during the break, there is a proposed law to help people within this realm.
Right. So Legal Aid isn't the only one to notice this problem related to debt-related suspensions. There are national organizations like the Fines and Fees Justice Center that are dedicated to eliminating debt-related driver's license suspensions around the country. And there's also local Ohio organizations like the Ohio Poverty Law Center who've taken up the mantle to try to change the laws on the books to make it a little bit easier for people to comply with traffic laws and also to make money to pay off debts when they incur them. As a result of that work, there is a bipartisan bill before the Ohio legislature. It's called Senate Bill 37 that would change the landscape related to debt-related driver's license suspensions pretty significantly. It's not passed. It's still before the legislature. But if it does pass, it'll change a lot of the rules that we've been talking about on this program.
I see. So what changes have you all been advocating for?
Well, so we're limited in the work that we can do to advocate directly, right? But there are organizations that have been helping this legislation along, and it would result in limiting driver's license suspensions to convictions related to dangerous driving. So it would do a lot to get rid of this debt-related driver's license suspension stuff. It would eliminate the government's authority to revoke or suspend or refuse to renew a person's driver's license for failure to pay court fines or fees. That's a big issue, right? If you owe money to a court or you owe fines to a court, that can result in a suspension. Again, it's a debt. It's not related to dangerous driving, but it can still result in you losing your license. It essentially gets rid of that. It removes the court's authority to suspend your license for failure to appear for minor offenses in court. It eliminates the type of security suspensions that we were talking about, which are related to debt owed to third parties. It eliminates judgment suspensions, which are similarly related to debt owed to third parties. And in those types of suspensions, it's really it's private citizens or companies leveraging the BMV, a government agency, to collect a debt. It's almost like using the BMV as a debt collector, which makes it, if you think of it that way, like, hey, that doesn't really make sense. The bill, if passed, it would require reinstatement of a driver's license after it's suspended for a person's failure to provide proof of insurance. After that person does provide proof and pays a reduced $25 reinstatement fee and then a $10 deputy registrar fee. Right now, those types of suspensions, they have graduated fee levels. So the first time you're caught driving without insurance, you have a fee of $150 that you need to pay to the BMV before you get your driver's license back, and that may be in addition to court fines or fees related to a traffic ticket you get. If you get caught the second time within 5 years, that fee goes up to $350, and then a third time it goes up to $650. And each time, the debt that you incurred before doesn't go away. So, if you get caught, for instance, 3 times in a 5-year period driving without insurance, that's almost $1,000 you're going to have to pay before you get your driver's license back. And this changes that. It eliminates lingering suspensions from a practice that was in place for a while but is no longer in place, where the BMV would send out letters randomly to drivers and ask for proof of insurance through the mail, and if they didn't provide proof of insurance, they'd suspend their licenses. The BMV stopped doing that a while ago, but a lot of suspensions that resulted from that kind of random selection suspension are still on the books, so the bill would get rid of those suspensions. And it would also increase the opportunities available for people to petition for limited driving privileges, right? Which we talked about. It would make that option available in more cases.
Amazing, because it's hard. I tried to get it, and it was hard when I was going through my issues. Yeah, it's so interesting. Every time I have a conversation with Legal Aid Society, a member of Legal Aid Society, I've been afflicted by many of our topics.
Well, but that's an important, it's important to know that this happens to millions of people.
Yes.
Right? 1 million people a year have their driver's license suspension. And those people have, a lot of people with driver's license suspensions have more than one, right? There are 3 million active suspensions in Ohio today. This is not an uncommon thing. And if you look at, who it affects most and where it is most prevalent, you see that the system doesn't really work. Right. This idea that you can take away driver's license suspensions from somebody who owes a debt, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make intuitive sense. It doesn't make sense to take away a person's ability to make money when they can't pay a debt, making it harder for them to pay debts. The idea of using the BMV as sort of a debt collector also doesn't make sense. It's sort of, and this scheme, this debt-related driver's license suspension scheme, fails it fails in its goal, right? Mm-hmm. If its goal is to incentivize people to have insurance, to pay court fines and fees, it's not very good at it. If you look at the number or the amount of debt owed versus the amount of debt actually collected in any given year, mm-hmm. the amount owed is the vast majority of it is left unpaid. So suspensions just stay on people's records. So it brings in some revenue to the government, but not a whole lot. Certainly not compared to how much debt is created. And people still drive, right? They take the risk of still driving, even if they don't have an active driver's license suspension. So it doesn't get people off the road. It doesn't collect the money that you're trying to collect. Mm-hmm. And it has this really negative impact on people where they fall into this cycle of debt that becomes harder and harder to get out of.
And so this is why I huff and I puff. And if you do not have a comment on my comment, I totally understand. But I think what their actual objective is for the communities that are affected by these debt-related driver license suspensions, though they're not making much off of it, is continuing their objective to keep the cycle going. And it's sad to see, but I appreciate, again, places and spaces and entities such as Legal Aid Society trying to battle those entities and those, I don't want to say forces, but at will that are making it hard for people each and every day. So how would these new laws make it easier for those affected?
Well, like I discussed, if the bill is passed, SB 37, all these types of suspensions we're talking about, the security suspension, the judgment suspension, all these suspensions based on debt would either go away or mm-hmm. become a lot easy to comply with, right? They'd always still result in you have to drive in with insurance, so you'd have to show proof of insurance. But it gets rid of that, the escalating debt spiral that prevents people from being able to pay for insurance and being able to get their driver's license back. And if folks listening want to learn more about this issue, they can go a number of different places. They can go to the OPLC, that's the Ohio Poverty Law Center's website. They can go to Legal Aid's website, where we have a lot of resources available to drivers who are facing suspensions. You could also read the study that we put out, Road to Nowhere, Debt-Related Driver's License Suspensions in Ohio, that really lays out the problem that these types of suspensions present. The Marshall Project put out a different study that showed essentially the same issues last year. And there's also a lot of media attention now around this issue. So if you just Google driver's license suspensions in Ohio or debt-related suspensions in Ohio, you're going to get a lot of media articles about this issue. So you can educate yourself. You can learn about SB 37 and how it might change the laws. And you can learn, or you can get some tools to deal with the problem if it affects you personally. Yes.
And again, when I was going through this, I found out that I could ask for a financial hardship on my court date, and they would either approve me doing community service or they would deny it and I would have to pay anyway. Mm-hmm. But they ended up approving it.
Great.
And I was very grateful. But I still was upset. But of course, I did my community service. I got it out the way. But that's just another little tidbit for our listening audience out there who may have some issues within this department, but you don't have the money, and it is what it is. But if you got some time to spare, that's another way for you to, handle it without paying. Just saying.
Yeah, and that's a great option. Unfortunately, that option varies by court.
Right.
It depends what court you're in, where the court may or may not be willing to enter into payment agreements like that or do a community service deal.
So how would people know the difference?
Talk to the court. Let's say, I know a lot of folks are nervous about, let's say they have a warrant block. on their record because they failed to show up in court. They're worried that if they show up in court to ask about it, they face arrest, right? Because there's a warrant out for the arrest. I'd encourage those folks, if they know that they have a warrant block on the record, to call the court clerks to figure out what that amount is and how they could pay it, right? Okay. That's good advice. Call legal aid, get information about your options, and look up the resources that we have on our website.
Yes, again, that website is lasclev.org. And if you need some help, just click on apply for help in the top right corner. That's lasclev.org. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take one last quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to wrap all of this up in a crazy little brilliant, beautiful bow for you. Don't go anywhere. Our voices today, right here on WOVU.
Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life. Stand up, my people.
Cross and Blue Shield, the name you can trust because we're the plan that plans on everything from 3 a.m. fevers to life-saving medicines. So choose Anthem for your Medicaid plan. Visit AnthemOhio.com today.
This was brought to you by Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield Insurance and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our voices united. Burton Bell Carr Community Radio.
It's time to make the short story longer. Yeah. Stand up, my people. Stand for something in your life. Stand up, my people.
Welcome back to Our Voices today, right here on WOVU 95.9 FM. And don't forget, you can always listen to us right on the website, WOVU.org. Or if you got to go somewhere, take us with you. Download the app. You can listen anytime, any place, WOVU app. If you are just tuning in, this is Uni on Our Voices today, of course, with the lovely Mike Russell from the Legal Aid Society. And we've been discussing all things debt-related, driver's license suspensions. And I mentioned, a little bit about my struggle previously. But we also discussed legal aid in general and what they service, you guys, the areas that they service, and no criminal cases, but anything civil they can help you with, especially those taxes, because we all know, again, what time of year it is. But if you guys need some help, you can always call 888-817-3777, 888-817-3777, or you can visit Legal Aid Society website, lasclev.org. That's lasclev.org, and you'll see a tab right in the top right hand corner that says apply for help, and you can go ahead and get the intake process started. Mr. Russell, what do you have left to leave with the people here today?
Well, if you're facing a debt-related driver's license suspension, you have options, right? Figure out what kind of suspension is. Figure out what you need to do to bring it into compliance. You can apply for legal aid for assistance. We may be able to provide you information. Go to our website for resources. Also, it's important to know that this problem is incredibly common, especially if you live in the city.
Yes.
You are not alone. This affects millions of people. Third, I'd be remiss not to mention that, a lot of people in the area have been working on this issue. Neighborhood Connections, or Neighbor Up, if you know them, they had a campaign, Drive to Justice, led by the Fierce Joy Carter, that is organizing to build support amongst drivers affected by debt-related suspensions. There's a lot of work going on both nationally, locally, and around the state around this issue, and it's important.
Yes, absolutely. It's definitely important because, again, it's just a way for them to continue the cycle of poverty. So please, 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 guys, if you can't support these initiatives to change these laws in any way, shape, or form, whether it's a signature, online, or on a piece of paper, figure it out and support these initiatives because they affect our community ongoing. And again, thank you so much to entities such as Legal Aid Society, making a difference each and every day, helping people within our community figure out how to resolve these civil law issues. Thank you so much, Mr. Russell, for coming in today. Thank you, listening audience, for tuning in. Again, make sure you take us with you. Download the app. Visit us at WOVU.org. Again, that website for Legal Aid Society is LASCLEV.org. Don't go anywhere. ATM, all things money is coming up. Brought to you by WOVU and the VV Foundation. Guys, look, I've learned a lot listening to them. I'm sure you will as well. Keep listening. WOVU 95.9 FM.
Struggling with a legal issue that impacts your basic needs, such as housing, safety, or finances? The Legal Aid Society of Cleveland may be able to help. They offer free legal services to people facing eviction, landlord disputes, debt problems, and more. Visit Legal Aid's website at www.lasclev.org to apply for help, or call 216-687-1900.